I'm Ruby Jones, and you're listening to 7am. Right now, TikTok is awash with videos of how to get around the social media ban for under 16s, which is due to come into effect in a week. At the same time, fringe apps like Yope are rocketing up the Apple charts as teenagers plan where they'll go when the major platforms boot them off. There's also a court case underway, challenging the government on whether the ban is even legal. Today, Associate Editor at Crikey, Cam Wilson, on who is behind the lawsuit, whether they'll win, and how this ban could change the country. It's Wednesday, December 3. So, Cam, the social media ban is due to come into effect in just a few days now, but already there is a legal challenge underway. So to begin with, can you tell me about who is trying to take the social media ban to the High Court?
The group behind the High Court challenge is this new association called the Digital Freedom Project. They're led by Libertarian MLC from New South Wales, John Ruddick. And not much is really known about the group. It just came out of nowhere. We don't even know the people who elected John Ruddick the president. He just said that he was.
We're expecting that Google or Elon Musk, these big tech platforms, that they would be taking this High Court challenge. They're the ones that they're facing $50 million fines.
Good point. Where are they?
Well, they were saying they were going to do it, but I mean, me and my mate sat around 2 months ago and said, well, they're not going to, we're on track for no one to do anything. So we said, well, let's start the Digital Freedom Project.
But the group claims to have now thousands of supporters who are who've kind of got on board, and perhaps some of them are donating to this case. The one little thing that we do know that gives us a little bit of insight into the challenge is that it is being run by a law firm that has been part of a few, I would call them culture war challenges to laws in the past. And one of their solicitors who was contacting expert witnesses to appear for this challenge is Catherine Deves. She's a former Liberal candidate in Warringah who has a history of anti-trans comments. Her background is notable because one of the groups that Digital Freedom Project said will be most affected by this is LGBT teens. So, I mean, it definitely has gotten a little bit of attention on that. So they've filed a challenge in court and they're hoping to get an injunction on the law. We'll be finding out over the next couple of days whether either of those two applications are successful.
Interesting. Okay, and what about the two teenagers that are kind of the face of it, the names to the challenge? What do we know about them and the case that they're making here?
So there were two teenage plaintiffs in the case, and the grounds on which it's being challenged is this idea of the ban infringes on the implied right to freedom of political expression in Australia.
There is an implied right to the freedom of political communication in this country. Okay, now it's not written in the Constitution, but they've accepted it now for about 3 or 4 decades.
Freedom of political communication, righto.
That's right. It's not
this
as
is
good
different
as the
to free
American.
speech.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the Americans have got it a lot better than us, and that's what we want.
Australians don't really have a explicit freedom of speech right as there are in some other countries, but there has kind of been one cobbled together through case law and other means. And so this is the grounds on which the ban is being challenged.
Well, I'm grateful to be the plaintiff for young Australians having, the right to free speech. And I feel with this ban in place, we'll be invisible. We won't be able to share our views or opinions, and we won't be able to hear political views or opinions, so we'll just be isolated.
And we've heard that from many teenagers, haven't we? The idea that this ban interferes with their freedom of political expression and might, hinder their ability to, say what they think.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that the ban works is obviously it's cutting off a portion of the population from one of the main ways that politics is done in Australia, in terms of both getting information about what's happened, but also having a say in what happens. The fact that they're not actually voters isn't necessarily an issue. And I think it's pretty fitting that, a lot of the discussion around the ban and a lot of the pushback, a lot of it's happened online. So it's kind of almost in a way a case in point that teens are using, in many cases, the tools that are being taken away from them to prove that, hey, actually, this is the thing that we use to take part in politics.
And the Albanese government has said that they'll stand firm, that they won't be intimidated by legal challenges.
And despite the fact that we are receiving threats and legal challenges by people with ulterior motives, the Albanese government remains steadfastly on the side of parents and not of platforms.
So do you think that they have been preparing for cases like this to be brought?
When the law was initially passed, there was some discussion about a potential challenge, but really this has been on the agenda of the government, particularly since Google in the middle of the year, after it was announced that the government was actually going to change tact and include YouTube in the teen social media ban. Their response was to send through a very legal sounding letter that was in fact signed by Google's Australia's head of counsel, saying, here are the 3 avenues for a legal challenge, and one of them was the constitutionality. And so obviously when you get one of the biggest companies in the world, one who has, I'm sure, very well paid and very effective lawyers on side, they've been thinking about this and talking about this and no doubt preparing for this since then. And I think that's actually one of the kind of interesting things, which is like, despite the fact that the law came into effect last year and it's had this long runway, many of the details have taken a while to come out. And I think that that process has actually been slowed down by the fear of a legal challenge. I think that there is like a kind of interesting question, which is, even if it is successful and this law actually is struck down, you know, the next step from the government might be doing something very similar, as we saw with immigration law when there was one struck down in the High Court. So it's a bit of a game of cat and mouse, and everyone is trying to play this out and understand what ends up happening. But, you know, in all of this, the government has been really firm and saying, hey, we're sticking with this despite the legal threats, because I think fundamentally they think it plays well for them. One of the political forces behind this law is that there has been this desire in the community to crack down on big tech. So the fact that there is a fight over this, well, I'm sure it's a pain in the neck for some government lawyers. It's something that I imagine the government, it relishes to take on some industry that people are excited to see tamed.
Coming up, will the ban work? Okay, so we'll have to wait and see how this particular legal challenge plays out. But in the meantime, we're already hearing from politicians that this ban is not going to be perfect and that we should expect there to be problems when it does come into effect on December 10. So what are they talking about? What is likely to happen?
So, I mean, in fairness to the government, they've been saying this since before the law was passed. They're saying we don't expect this to be perfect. But I've noticed, particularly over the last few months, they've really made that one of the core parts of this message.
We know this law will not be perfect, but it is too important not to have a crack.
And the key to understanding why all of a sudden the government is really stressing the fact that this thing that they're doing might have problems is because fundamentally this law puts the onus on these companies to be the ones who implement it, which is this funny tension where at the same time they're saying, you know, they can't be trusted, yada, yada, yada. They're also giving these companies the responsibility of enforcing it.
Right, so tell me more then about how the platforms plan on doing that. How are they going to enforce the ban?
We know that these social media platforms are using a variety of tools. They're using everything from analyzing the data that they already have about you. Like, for example, I'm going to age myself here. I think I've had like a Facebook account for 13, 14, 15 years. It's not going to take a genius at Meta to realize, to look at when my account was created and be like, that probably belongs to someone who's more than 16 years of age. But if that doesn't work, if they don't have that information on you or they're not confident in that, the other methods that they'll be using are things like facial scans or uploading your government ID. Facial scans are a technology that have pretty well-known flaws, particularly when it comes to distinguishing people who are over 16 or under 16 when you get pretty close to it. And so, you know, the government is saying, hey, you might have some issues with this, either the scan's not working properly and not letting you actually access your social media account, or the ban itself might not be perfect, that people will get through the ban, that they'll have workarounds, that they'll convince these systems that you are over 16 when you're not. So either way, you know, they're trying to lower expectations to say this is a work in progress, but where I think, as the Prime Minister has said, it's worthwhile having a crack.
And there is also, I suppose, the other side of this, which is that there are apps, companies that aren't named and don't fall under the ban yet, and people could flock to them instead. And that could kind of happen indefinitely, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, I noticed last week, I was just looking through the top apps on the Apple App Store, and I was like, that's an app I've never heard of. It was called Yope, and it still is called Yope, and it is a kind of little-known social media platform that was launched in the US at the end of last year. I did a bit of research and found that teens online were already saying, hey, this ban is coming up. The government has put out this list of 10 platforms that will definitely need to comply with the ban. Others might be added, but just for now, just so you know, these are the ones who will definitely be in it. Yope is not in the ban. So teens trying to say, what are we going to do post December 10? Where are we going to go? Meant that app, as well as a Instagram-like app that comes from the same company that owns TikTok, which is called ByteDance, that app, which is Lemonade, had also become one of the most downloaded apps in Australia over towards the end of last weekend.
What is Lemonade? I keep getting these requests on TikTok saying, so-and-so wants to follow you.
There's an app called Lemonade, which we all kind of know about, I feel like, but we don't really all use. I just downloaded it and there's a link in my bio right now and you can tap.
So I think the real question is, when they go to these alternatives, what experience are they going to have? Are these platforms really good at taking care of young users? Do they invest in it at all? I was having a look at Yope's website. They don't even have any information about any trust and safety that they do. This is one of the scenarios that critics of the ban raise as a fear because, the thing is, online when you ban something, it's very easy to just kind of create something new and go there without much hassle.
Okay, so the goal here of this legislation is to protect children from harmful content online. So what is your sense, broadly speaking, of whether legislation like this can influence young people's desire to get on already existing platforms, new platforms, to the extent where this legislation would actually make a meaningful difference to a generation of young people?
I think it's going to make a meaningful difference. Love it or hate it, this law is drastically going to change how young people use their devices because the most popular platforms for young people are now supposed to be out of reach. And, while I definitely think there'll be workarounds on the major platforms, people will fool them. People will get their parents to vouch for them by using their face or providing their ID. I do think that a lot of teens will not. And so there will be adaptation to that. I think the question that's been up in the air the whole time is not only will it work as well as the government has promised, but also comparing it to, if we didn't do this, what else could we have done? Because a lot of the public debate has been, well, we should either do the ban or not do anything at all. But the experts that I spoke to, academics who study this, expressed to me that all the time that we spent in this, all the political capital to do something that might not be as effective as was promised, there are other options out there about ways that we can regulate with technology. Meanwhile, when this is done, will there really be a public appetite to do more regulation, to have more discussion over it? The question is, are we missing an opportunity where there is this will to do something that might be more targeted and more effective? I guess we'll see.
Well, Cam, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Also in the news today, recent governments have rewarded friends with plum jobs, a scathing review into political appointments has confirmed. The government commissioned the report, which has become known as the Jobs for Mates Review, in 2022 and promised to release it in 2023. It was finally released yesterday and said that government appointments looked like forms of patronage and nepotism that should have no place in modern Australian society. In response, the government says it has a new framework for picking appointments, but it has also rejected a number of key recommendations. And an inquiry into sexual violence in the ADF is set to proceed, the Defence Personnel Minister Matt Keogh has confirmed. It's been a year since the final report from the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide, when the inquiry was first recommended and agreed to. Now the government has given more detail into the scope, which includes a review of the efficacy of military justice compared with civilian justice, a look at perpetrator accountability and barriers deterring alleged victims from reporting their abuse. The inquiry is expected to begin mid-next year. I'm Ruby Jones. This is 7am. Thanks for listening.